add value to your business, or do you want to just be this administrative person?
And often if you look at your talent team and the caliber of talent in your company, they correlate.
You could hire the best person for the job if they were in your candidate pool.
All these individual employees, one by one, together, their voices all come together to articulate the culture of the company.
Ultimately, we want to attract people of all backgrounds, whatever their experience may be, because we know that they're going to add value to the company.
Greetings, HR Tech listeners and the greater HR universe. It's Britt Ryan, head of recruiting at Intello, back once again with my trusty sidekick, Sean Simmerly.
How's it going?
It's good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm slowly getting caffeinated as the day moves on, which is important. There's quite a few on the docket for today.
I know. And I have to tell you very selfishly, I think that this one might be my favorite.
I think I might know why that is, Britt. So joining us today is someone that works at a really cool company that does something with bikes. So
cool.
Yeah.
And as it was pointed out to me earlier, your last name also is somewhat appropriate.
It is.
I'm guessing Jeremy Ryder, who is the head of TA at Trek, has heard that one before.
I have, yes. It's good to be here. First of all, thank you.
So excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, honestly, Jeremy, like I said, we are Marin folk, Sean and I, and avid cyclists ourselves. So, I have to say that there are companies that you look at and you think about lifestyle and quality of life and work-life balance, and I would have to imagine that Trek kind of checks those boxes. Tell me a little bit about what it's like to recruit and bring talent into Trek, and what are some of the things that are really appealing to the people you're trying to bring on board there?
Yeah, absolutely. And you really kind of hit the nail on the head as far as the kind of the culture and lifestyle of Trek. And that's actually one of the things that attracted me there just a little over a year and a half ago now. It's a culture where, you have I was just telling him just a few minutes ago, you have just a ton of amazing athletes. And so it's a humbling place to work from a fitness perspective. But what I really love, and I tell candidates all the time about working at Trek, is you have a lot of really talented, really smart people that really know their craft, be it marketing or be it sales or be it engineering. But at the same time, they can kind of check out of that and then just go on a bike ride during lunch, or we can have crazy parties in the cyclocross season and just have an absolute blast on a bike. And it's a place where it's very collaborative. People really work well together and they have a lot of fun. And so my coworker and I, we joke that every morning we come to work, we have this huge smile on our face because we're excited to be there. Even though it's going to be a busy day, we've got a lot going on, we actually really want to be there that day. So it's pretty great.
I love that.
Yeah.
So is that a requirement to come and work at Trek? Do you have to be athletic, or talk to me about inclusion there?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked. And so that's actually been a big a challenge and a kind of perception to work through in recruiting especially. So as we've grown in retail this year, we've been opening a lot of new retail stores that we historically have not owned. And I think the perception is you have to be a cyclist, you have to be fit to work there. And it's not a prerequisite. Ultimately we want awesome people that want to do awesome things for the bike company. And we like to tell candidates that if they do ask us that, like if you don't like bikes when you go there, it's totally fine, but eventually you're going to love bikes. And so just be willing to eventually like working out and hanging out. But the culture itself is very inclusive regardless of your background.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Love it.
Yeah, and actually kind of to touch on culture, you were featured this year in JobBite's Recruiter Nation Live and in Mashable, actually speaking about the importance of companies kind of fine-tuning how they convey their culture to attract better fit candidates. Can you tell us a little bit about Trek's branding and how that's evolved and how that's impacted how you hire specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've spent a lot of work this past year and a half or so on that specifically. Ultimately we want to attract people of all backgrounds, whatever their experience may be. Ultimately because we know that they're going to add value to the company. And so as we've kind of told the story from a branding perspective, we really want to tell a story of what's unique to Trek. What makes us unique versus another bike company or an engineering firm, such as some of the other companies that we compete with there. So we really want to tell people, why would you want to work with us? And then second to that, we really want to set the expectation of what it's like to work there. So we've kind of taken that approach because we like to say that we don't want there to be surprises if you join us. So we don't want you to come in on your first day and be like, well, I had no idea that you guys like to get stuff done, or as we say, GSD. And you can change that S if you want to. But it's at the same time, we want to tell that story so as people start to apply and start to engage and start to think, I could see myself in that culture. I could see myself being there as we go through that process, and they show up on their first day. It's really exciting. And I think through that, we've been able to, through video and through messaging on LinkedIn and Career Builder and, not Career Builder, but Glassdoor and other sites, we've been able to tell that story very uniquely and doing kind of employee bios. And through that, we've had just a huge kind of response to that. We've had a lot more applicants. It's been a really, really fun year in kind of telling that story.
Interesting. So I'm curious too, for where you guys are located in Wisconsin, what does the talent pool look like there? How do you recruit mostly locally? Do you bring people in from other parts and get them to move to Wisconsin to be at HQ? Or, how do you kind of go through that process of attracting talent, to someplace that's not like a major metropolitan area?
Absolutely, yeah. It's Madison, Wisconsin. So we're actually in Waterloo, which is right outside of Madison, and surprisingly, there's a really good talent pool there. If you look at certain areas of the business, there's a lot of IT there with Epic, Google's there, Amazon's there. Smaller offices, of course, compared to San Francisco.
Sure.
But then there's a lot of other like product roles or engineering roles where we'll recruit kind of outside of the U.S. Unfortunately, for us, Trek's got a really big name. So when we start posting roles and when we start recruiting, people at least kind of associate, Trek, bikes, got it, and then we can start that conversation. But I would say that probably, I'm slightly making up this number, probably 80% or so of our hires have been local hires, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, that's great.
But then the other 20% have been relocatable. So myself, I came from Houston, Texas to join Trek. And then there's been quite a other friends that are now have become friends that come from outside of the state as well. But it's one of those areas that we also set the expectation of, it's cold here. We actually have winters in the Midwest. I remember sitting down with my interview with my now manager, Jen, and she goes, I don't think you know this, but it gets really cold here. And I was fully transparent and said, I know it's cold, but I don't know what that feels like. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Talking about kind of some of those engineering roles you're looking outside of the area made me think of, we were talking with a couple people yesterday about kind of finding software engineers, especially as data becomes more prevalent in kind of the HR and talent acquisition spaces. So how are you going about, like, when you have those conversations with these software engineers or technical individuals saying, hey, we're a bike company that's hiring a software engineer, like, what does that exactly look like?
Yeah, that's been a big challenge for us. I think most TA professionals would say recruiting software in general is really difficult these days. Limited amount of people. There's really good jobs out there. Some companies pay exceptionally well. So the cards are stacked against us and other companies too. And so really for us, what I find really unique about Trek, and one of the things that I think is really awesome from the software perspective, is Trek is a really tech-focused company. And I never knew that going into it, but as I've started working there, I've realized that we have our own software system that we license out to dealers to basically run their business, everything from inventory to financial backend, everything, ordering the whole kit and caboodle.
Wow.
We also, B-Cycle is a ride-sharing program that you see in lots of cities. I know Los Angeles has that. I think San Francisco has a different brand, but similar ride-sharing program. But we run all of the data, all of the tech for that. Then in addition to, we do our own B2B, our own B2C sites, and then there's a lot of other kind of nuanced things that we do as well. So when we're talking to candidates, we really talk a lot about, you wouldn't really think of Trek Bikes as a tech company, but as we look forward into the future of what we want to do with a Trek and what John Burke's been talking about, digital and digital this and digital that, I think we're on the cusp. We get to really create and develop a lot over the years to come. And so I think from a candidate perspective, it's a cool story to tell, and they also get to be a part of kind of that building of that process or that program or whatever that may look like. And so in their eyes, they can actually see something from really start to finish, rather than they're just involved in something that's already happened.
Wow. And actually, so you were talking about, kind of creating these technologies in-house, and something you've spoken about before is kind of efficiencies through technologies, right? So how does that fit in? Like, what has, building this stuff in-house done for your team as far as efficiency?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just talk about our team, and just in recruiting alone, I've been talking a lot about simplicity through efficiency, and really just weeding out all of the noise that's out there, and finding one system or two really good systems that kind of run everything for us. And so that way, when you start a process, you can take it from beginning to end, rather than when I first started there was just a whole bunch of different softwares that you were having to go from one place to another place to another place. days. And it just made our jobs we could do it, but it was just terribly inefficient. And so how do we simplify that? And then if we kind of take that to the other side, if we look at technology on B-Cycle and our ride sharing program, how do we make that more simple, more user friendly? So we've got some really cool stuff coming out where on the bikes, on the handlebars, there'll be like an iPhone-like screen where you can put in your destination, and then on the bike there'll be a screen that can tell you navigationally where to go from point A to point B. And it's really saying, how do we create a good user experience that's very simple, it's very efficient, but then it's also safe. Now you're not driving, looking at your phone as you're riding your bike and trying not to run red lights or hit cars or people. And so as we look at B2B and B2C, it's also how do we make that easier for the customer? How do we make it more efficient? How do we help our customers who are buying products from us have a more efficient shopping process as well?
I wish that you guys had some of those bikes around here for me to be cruising around on.
Just the Venetian.
I know, really. I seriously need like maps and an iPhone app just to tell me how to get from like point A to point B.
Yeah, absolutely. At least you get lots of steps.
Yeah, exactly. It's my workout. So
Yeah.
Right on. Well, so curious, talk to us a little bit about, the technology. So it sounds like you scaled back on certain things and are exploring other things. For you spending time at HR Tech over the past couple of days, what are the things that have really piqued your interest? Are there certain things that you're starting to think about, maybe making some additional changes or additions to sort of what's in the toolbox for your team?
Yeah, so we look at kind of where we are now and where we're headed next year, and then beyond that as well. We've got just a huge amount of recruiting challenges, and so how can we leverage technology to continue to help us with that? And so the buzzword obviously this year, and I think years before and years probably to come, is artificial intelligence. So what does that look like?
Yeah.
What does AI look like? And I see it in so many different various ways. I think somebody was talking yesterday about like what is the definition of AI, and they said there could be this, there could be that. And so for us, it's trying to figure out which version of that do we want to try to potentially plug into our system. And so I look at it from back to the efficiency thing, right? How do we find something that's really simple that makes our life more efficient? So I feel, AI could definitely be a part of that. We're budgeting for that going into this next year. We're also looking at stuff that, how do we continue to improve the candidate experience through the process? That's just something that I've been very, very passionate about. So as we have technology, how does it continue to make that better? And one of the areas we've really been looking at is onboarding. And it's really, we handhold, and we're really a part of that whole process from, job application through offer accept. And we don't want that to, not that it does now, but we don't want that to fall through from that onboarding perspective. And then of course on the back end, how do we make it so it's efficient for our team? Because unfortunately we don't have an infinite budget to grow our team to 100 people.
If only.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, right?
But at the same time, how do we make it so that when we come in, we still have that smile on our face that we talked about, that what we're doing is adding to the bottom line of that candidate experience.
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of like, is AI actually going to take some of the work off of your team and allow them to focus on things that you define as being like the real priorities, and maybe giving them some time back in their day from some of the, minutia that they get stuck in because somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big part of it. Is we've kind of messed around with it some this year through some companies that let us pilot stuff, and we've all just said we love it. I think it's a huge value add, and if they have that free time to spend more time, interacting with candidates, building relationships with our customers in the business, if they're doing that really well, then we continue as a recruiting organization to really show that value back of this is why we're here. This is the advantage that we add to Trek as a whole. But then as candidates are interacting with us and we have more time to stay on the phone with them to talk through that, they're getting a better sense of who Trek is, and they really feel that they are truly valued, even from just the application process, not just after they're hired as well.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Like you guys have customers who purchase your bikes, and then you want them to have a great experience, and candidates are your customers too, and making sure that they feel really excited about the opportunity and the brand. I think that's something for us at Intello that we always think about, where I'm like, even if somebody doesn't get the job, you want to make sure that they walk away feeling really good about their experience, about how they were treated, that they would consider referring someone to your company because you kept your process going in a way that was like very human, had touch points in it that were real.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, one of the things that Yeti Coolers, the recruiter over there, and her and I've got to know each other really well.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk a lot about how ultimately that our candidates are also our customers. And that balance is really hard for us because we don't want to, we don't want to, upset a candidate, but we also don't want to upset a customer. And so how do you balance that out? And I think technology can help, exponentially through that, so that we're making sure that alarms are going out, that feedback is going out, and that ultimately they're feeling like they're valued, regardless of the outcome of their application process.
Yeah. You're kind of talking about these different technologies to help people feel like they're part of the company, feel like the candidates are part of the process, right? Mm-hmm. Tech stacks are talked about so frequently, and you're talking about almost consolidating it down, making it more efficient. Do you feel like tech stacks in recruiting need to either be explored more and kind of grown, or maybe just companies are even unaware and just building these ridiculous stacks that aren't really made to integrate with one another?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think lots of things integrate together quite well. So you could live in one system, but then you have all these plugins that are coming into it, which works, right? It's a solution. Even you look around the HR tech floor, and my gosh, I was just overwhelmed yesterday when I walked in of like all of the booths that were there. And you think about, man, like if Trek were to invest in 5 of those, what that would look like, and then trying to connect all that and making sure that it works. So I kind of, as I was thinking this week about our presentation later today, and and some of the questions that you all might ask, and one of the things that I was thinking about is software, and you have like full stack development, right? And so a lot of times that we're hiring for development, we're looking for, as they say, full stack developers, and it's really from front end to back end, right? The entire process, and so they really need to know the nuances from the beginning to the end. And so when I think about recruiting and systems, to your question, I look at it as kind of a full stack kind of process.
Yeah.
But I think from a simplicity perspective, I look for, and when we were changing our ATS last year, looking for something that really was more of one thing from start to finish, right? So it's everything from job application to offer letters to communication to scheduling to onboarding and all those nuances that sit in there. And not that I wouldn't have integrated something into that, but I knew that our IT team is stretched. I knew that we didn't have a lot of budget dollars to continue to pay to connect everything. And then at the same time, like I didn't want to have 5 to 10 different vendor relationships that I'm having to manage as well. If I can use that time to again talk to candidates to improve our system to recruit, I'm adding more value back to Trek and back to that candidate experience. So to your question, I think people are thinking about that, but then I also think that they aren't, because you see this just continued growth and explosion of new and really creative and innovative ideas that are out there. So I always wonder if maybe at some point in time there will be a consolidation of all those, I use the word loosely, but startups and kind of smaller companies that they'll consolidate down to some bigger kind of superpowers in that world. You got like the Workdays that kind of own everything from beginning to end, but they are expensive, and we've looked at them and others, and a bike company like Trek, we just can't afford it, so we have to look for other things.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Great getting to know you, and we're looking forward to seeing more of you around here at HR Tech.
Yeah, thank you both. I appreciate it.
Talk to you later.
Bye.